Sometimes life strips you down to nothing but the next step forward. And even that feels impossible. Leah Montrose knew that feeling. 41. Pregnant, alone, walking mountain roads with nowhere left to go. She'd been moving for 3 days when she saw the church. It sat at the end of a forgotten dirt path, white paint peeling, ivy pulling at its walls. The door was open. Inside, morning light cut through the dust. The pews were empty, the air thick with silence. Then she found it, a wooden box hidden beneath a loose floorboard near the altar. Her grandmother's name was carved into the lid. What Leah discovered inside that box would unravel a family secret buried for decades and give her a reason to believe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The box was heavier than it looked. Leah sat back on her heels, feeling the rough wooden floor through her worn jeans, and studied the carved letters on the lid. Leah Montrose, her grandmother's name etched deep into the wood by someone who took their time, who meant for it to last. Leah had never met Karen. Her mother, Anne, had refused to speak about her own origins beyond the bare facts. Born in 1943, adopted as an infant, raised in a series of foster homes across Tennessee. When Leah was young and asked questions, Anne would go quiet, her face closing like a door. Eventually, Leah stopped asking. Some silences were louder than words. The church creaked around her. Morning light filtered through stained glass windows on the eastern wall, throwing pools of red and gold across the dusty pews. The place had been beautiful once. You could still see it in the clean lines of the architecture, the careful joinery of the wooden beams overhead, the hand-carved details on the altar rail. But time and weather had worn it down. Paint peeled in long strips from the walls. The floorboards were warped and split. AV had forced its way through gaps in the foundation, spreading green fingers across the back wall. Leah had stumbled onto the church by accident, or maybe by something else, something that felt too deliberate to be chance. She'd been walking for 3 days, sleeping rough under trees, when exhaustion finally dragged her down, moving without any real destination except away from Asheville, where she'd lost her apartment. Away from the hospital where she'd worked for 12 years until budget cuts eliminated her position. Away from the small circle of friends who'd grown distant when her life started falling apart. Away from the man who'd said he loved her, then disappeared when she told him she was pregnant. At 41, Leah thought she'd known who she was. A good nurse, a competent woman, someone who paid her bills on time and showed up when she said she would. Then the floor had dropped out from under everything, and she'd discovered how thin that certainty had been. Without a job, without a home, without anyone to call when things got bad, she was just another woman walking down a road with everything she owned in a canvas bag. The pregnancy had been a shock. She'd assumed at her age, after years, without so much as a scare, that motherhood had passed her by. Part of her had been relieved. She'd watched friends struggle with children and careers, marriages and money, and told herself she was content with her quiet life. Then Jacob had come along, charming, attentive, saying all the right things, and she'd let herself believe just for a little while that maybe it wasn't too late for something more. When the pregnancy test came back positive, Jacob had looked at her like she'd betrayed him. "You said you couldn't have kids," he told her, as if biology was a promise she'd broken. He was gone within a week. No forwarding address. Phone disconnected. Leah had considered her options with the clinical detachment she'd learned in nursing. Termination was legal, available, probably practical given her circumstances. But every time she tried to make the appointment, her hand would freeze over the phone. She'd think about her mother, adopted, unwanted, growing up knowing she'd been given away. She'd think about herself, alone all her life, except for Anne's cold presence and the silence between them that neither of them had ever known how to break. She decided to keep the baby. It wasn't a happy decision or a sad one. It just was. The only decision that felt like hers. Losing the apartment came next. 2 months of unemployment ate through her savings faster than she'd thought possible. Her landlord was sympathetic but firm. He had his own bills to pay. Leah packed what she could carry and left the rest on the curb for strangers to pick through. Her friends offered couches for a night or two, but there was always an expiration date on charity. She could see it in their eyes, the way they started calculating how long before concern turned to burden. So she'd started walking. She told herself she was heading back to the town where she'd grown up, though she hadn't been there in over a decade. Her mother had died 5 years ago. Cancer, swift and merciless, and there was nothing left for Leah in that place except old memories and her mother's unmarked grave in the county cemetery. But it was a destination at least, a point on the map that gave direction to her wandering. The Carolina Mountains in late autumn were beautiful and indifferent. Cold at night, mild during the day, the forests ablaze with color that would have moved her if she'd had the energy for beauty. She walked on paved roads when she could, dirt paths when she had to, sleeping in her sleeping bag under thick trees, eating what little food she'd brought until it ran out. After that, it was whatever she could find. Apples from abandoned orchards, berries she was fairly sure weren't poisonous, water from clear streams. On the third day, hungry and exhausted, and starting to feel the first real edge of panic about what she was doing, she turned onto a narrow dirt road that wound up into heavy forest. She'd been following it for an hour, beginning to think it led nowhere, when the trees opened up and there it was, the church. White-clapped, steeple pointing at the sky, surrounded by overgrown grass and wildflowers gone to seed. It looked like something out of an old photograph, the kind of place that belonged to another century. Leah had stood at the edge of the clearing, just staring. The door was open, not broken open or kicked in, just standing ajar, as if someone had stepped out for a moment and not bothered to close it behind them. She'd approached slowly, half expecting someone to appear and tell her to leave. But the church was empty, silent, except for the wind moving through the gaps in the walls and the faint sound of birds nesting in the rafters. Inside, the air was cool and still. Dust floated in the columns of light that fell through the windows. The pews were arranged in neat rows, though most were warped and cracked. The altar at the front was simple, a wooden table with a faded cloth, a tarnished brass cross lying on its side. Leah had set down her bag and just breathed. The first real shelter in 3 days, the first real moment of rest. She'd explored carefully, mapping the space like she used to map hospital corridors during night shifts. The main sanctuary, a small room off to the side that had probably been the pastor's office, now empty except for a broken chair and yellowed papers scattered across the floor. A storage closet with shelves full of dusty hymnals, old candles, a few Mothietan blankets, and behind the altar, a narrow door that led to what looked like living quarters. A small room with a cot, a washstand, a wooden chest pushed against the wall. The floorboard had come loose when she'd stepped on it, just a small crack, a piece of wood that shifted under her weight. She'd knelt down and pried it up carefully, half expecting to find rot or mice. Instead, there was a hollow space beneath, and in that space, the box. Now she held it in her lap, tracing the carved letters with one finger. Leah Montrose, her grandmother, a woman she'd never known, never even seen a picture of, and had destroyed any photographs after the grandmother Leah had grown up with, Anne's adoptive mother, had died. "I don't need pictures of people who didn't want me," Anne had said, her voice flat and final. Leah took a breath and opened the box. Inside, wrapped in layers of old cloth, were letters, dozens of them tied with faded ribbon, a small leather journal, its cover worn smooth with age, and on top of everything, a photograph. Leah lifted it carefully, black and white, edges soft with time. A young woman stood in front of the church. This church, Leah realized, wearing a nurse's uniform from another era, white dress, white cap, sensible shoes. She was smiling, but there was something careful in the expression, something held back. Her eyes looked directly at the camera with an intensity that crossed the decades. Leah turned the photograph over, written on the back in faded ink. Leah Montrose, 1942, the day I started work. The day she started work here in this church. Leah looked around the sanctuary with new eyes. Her grandmother had been here, had walked these floors, touched these walls, looked through these same windows. The connection felt suddenly physical, a thread pulled tight across time. She set the photograph aside and reached for the journal. The leather was soft, the pages brittle. She opened it carefully to the first entry, dated January 1942, and began to read. Today, I begin my work at the church clinic. Pastor Williams has given me the small room behind the altar for my quarters. It's not much, but it's mine, and the work is good. There are so many who need help, especially now with the war. I'm grateful to serve. The handwriting was neat, precise, the words measured and careful. Leah flipped through the pages, scanning entries. Daily notes about patients treated, supplies needed, small observations about the town and the people. And then, several months in, the tone began to shift. James came to the clinic today. He's been convalescing at the Hendersons' farm after his injury. His leg is healing well, but he still walks with a slight limp. We talked for a long time. He has kind eyes. Leah felt something tighten in her chest. She knew how this story ended, or at least she knew part of it. Her mother had been born in 1943. Unmarried mothers in that era faced shame that could destroy them. Whatever had happened between Karen and this James, it had ended with a baby given away and a lifetime of silence. She closed the journal, suddenly exhausted. The pregnancy made her tired in waves that came without warning, dragging her down into sleep, whether she was ready or not. She looked around the small room at the cot with its sagging mattress and made a decision. She would stay here tonight, maybe longer, long enough to read the rest of what her grandmother had left behind, long enough to understand where she came from, and maybe, just maybe, where she was going. Leah stood carefully, feeling the stiffness in her back and legs from 3 days of walking. She found the blankets in the storage closet, shook the dust from them, and spread them on the cot. Not comfortable, but better than the ground. She had a few bottles of water left in her bag. A granola bar she'd been saving. She ate it slowly, making it last, then lay down with the journal beside her. Through the window she could see the sun sinking toward the mountains, the light turning gold and then orange. The church settled around her with small sounds, wood contracting as the temperature dropped, birds rustling in the eaves, the sounds of a building that had stood for a long time and would stand a while longer. Leah closed her eyes and let herself drift, one hand resting on her belly, where her daughter, she was sure it was a daughter, was growing. Tomorrow she would read more. Tomorrow she would figure out what came next. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, she felt something close to safe. Leah woke to darkness and the sound of rain on the roof. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it came back. The church, the box, her grandmother's name, carved in wood. She fumbled for her phone to check the time, then remembered the battery had died yesterday. She'd have to find a way to charge it, though she had no one to call and nowhere to be. She lay still, listening to the rain. Her back ached, her bladder was full. The baby shifted inside her, a strange, rolling sensation that still felt foreign after 6 months. She pushed herself upright and made her way carefully through the dark sanctuary to the bathroom. She discovered yesterday. The toilet didn't work, no running water, but there was a bucket, and she used that, feeling the indignity of it, but grateful to have shelter at all. In the storage closet she found candles and matches. She lit 3 and placed them around the small room, creating a warm circle of light against the dark. Then she retrieved the box and settled back on the cot with the first letter. The envelope was yellowed with age, the paper inside thin and delicate. Leah unfolded it carefully, holding it close to the candlelight to read the faded ink. "My dearest child," it began, and Leah's throat went tight. "I'm writing this letter, knowing I may never be able to give it to you. They tell me it's better this way, that you'll have a good family, a proper home, everything I cannot provide. They tell me it's merciful to let you go cleanly, without confusion or complications. But I need you to know, even if you never read these words, that I loved you, that you were wanted, that giving you away is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I'm not sure I'll survive the doing of it. Your father was a good man. His name was James Whitfield, and he died in France last month. He got the telegram 3 weeks ago. He never knew about you. He'd already shipped out when I realized I was pregnant. I wrote him letters but never sent them. How could I? He was fighting a war. He didn't need my problems weighing on him. We were going to be married. He promised me that, and I believed him. I still believe him. James wasn't the kind of man who said things he didn't mean. But the war took him before he could keep his promise. And now here I am, unmarried, pregnant, facing the judgment of everyone in this town who used to smile at me in church. Pastor Williams asked me to leave the clinic. He said my condition was a poor example for the young women of the congregation. Mrs. Henderson came to see me and told me I should be ashamed. Even Mrs. Chen, whose little boy I nursed through pneumonia last winter, won't meet my eyes anymore. I'm writing this the day before you're due. I'm alone in the church. Tomorrow, a midwife named Joanna will come.
She's the only one who agreed to help me.
After you're born, I'll have 1 hour with you. That's what Mrs. Keller from the adoption agency said. 1 hour to hold you, to look at your face, to tell you everything I want you to know. Then they'll take you, and I'll sign the papers, and you'll belong to someone else. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let you go. But I have no money, no home, no family who will stand by me. The choices I have aren't really choices at all. Please know this. You're not a mistake. You were made from love, real love, the kind that's rare and precious. Your father was brave and kind and funny. He made me feel like the world was bigger than this small town and its small judgments. And you, I felt you moving inside me for months now, and I already know you're strong. Stronger than me. I'm going to find you someday. I don't know how, but I will. I'll save money. I'll search. I'll do whatever it takes. And when I find you, I'll tell you this story properly. I'll tell you about your father, about how we met, about the life we were supposed to have. I'll make you understand that being given away didn't mean you weren't loved. If I never find you, if something happens to me, or if the world won't let me have you back, then I pray someone kind raises you. Someone who tells you you're worthy and wanted. Someone who gives you the life I couldn't. Be happy, my child. Be strong and forgive me if you can. Your mother, Leah Montrose, April 15th, 1943. Leah read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the paper. April 15th, 1943. Her mother's birthday, the day Karen had given her away. Anne had died 5 years ago without knowing any of this. She'd grown up believing she was unwanted, thrown away, not worth keeping. She'd carried that wound her whole life, and it had shaped everything. Her coldness, her distance, her inability to show affection even to her own daughter. Leah had spent her childhood trying to earn love from a woman who didn't know how to give it, who'd never received it herself. And all along, Karen had loved her, had wanted her, had been forced to make an impossible choice, and had spent the rest of her life trying to undo it. Leah set the letter down and pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them as much as her belly would allow. She wept for her grandmother, for her mother, for the terrible waste of it all. 3 generations of women who'd never known how to reach each other across the silence. Her hand went to her belly, feeling the solid warmth of the baby inside. 6 months now, 3 more to go, and she was alone, just like Karen had been. No husband, no family, no real plan beyond surviving one day at a time. But she had these letters, this story, this proof that love existed even when everything else fell apart. She had her grandmother's words, telling her she came from something real, something worth fighting for. Leah wiped her face and reached for the next letter, then the next. The rain continued outside, steady and relentless. But inside the circle of candlelight, she was somewhere else entirely. In 1943, watching her grandmother's life unfold in careful handwriting, on pages that smelled like time and dust and old sorrow, there were letters written after the birth. Letters that were never sent but addressed to my daughter. Letters that documented Karen's grief, her guilt, her desperate attempts to find information about the baby she'd given away. Letters that grew more urgent as months became years. I went to the adoption agency today. One read, "Mrs. Keller told me the records are sealed." She said, "It's better for everyone. Better for you, better for your new family." She said, "I signed away my rights and I should move on with my life. But how do I move on from you? You're written into my bones. Every baby I see, every child I pass on the street, I wonder if it's you. I wonder if you have my eyes or your father's smile. I wonder if you're happy, if you're loved. If anyone has told you that you matter, I bought the church property today. The county was selling it. The congregation moved to a newer building in town, and no one wanted this old place. I used every penny I've saved. I don't know what I'll do with it, but it's mine now. The place where you were born. The only thing I have that connects me to you. Maybe someday you'll find your way here. Maybe someday I'll be able to tell you that I never stopped looking, that I never stopped loving you. Leah looked around the sanctuary with new understanding. Karen had bought this place, had claimed it as hers, had kept it even after she must have known she'd never see her daughter again. The last letter in the bundle was different from the others. Shorter, shakier handwriting, dated 1968. To my daughter or my granddaughter if she exists. I'm dying. Cancer. The doctors give me a few months, maybe less. I never found you. I tried for 25 years, but the system was built to keep us apart, and I couldn't break through it. I failed you. I failed myself. But I'm leaving this for you, in case you ever come looking. The church is yours. The deed is filed with the county. Everything I have, everything I am, belongs to you and anyone who comes after you. Take it, build something, make it mean something. You are not a mistake. You were born from love. Forgive me if you can. Karen Montrose. Leah sat in the candlelight, holding her grandmother's final words, and felt something shift inside her. Not the baby. Something deeper, a decision taking shape, a purpose. She wasn't going to run anymore. She wasn't going to disappear into the mountains and hope things worked out. She was going to stay here in this church, in this place her grandmother had kept for a daughter who never came. She was going to claim what was hers, and she was going to give her own daughter what no one else in their family had ever had. A home, a beginning, a place to belong. The rain eased toward morning. Leah finally slept, her hands still resting on the letters, her grandmother's words echoing in her dreams. Morning came cold and clear. Leah woke stiff from the thin mattress, her bladder insistent, her stomach hollow with hunger. She had one granola bar left and half a bottle of water. After that, she'd have to figure something out. She stood carefully, feeling the ache in her lower back that had become constant over the past month. The baby was getting heavier, changing her balance, making everything harder. Simple tasks, getting up, bending down, walking, required thought and effort. Now in the storage room, she found an old metal bucket and carried it outside. There was a hand pump near the back of the church, half hidden by weeds. She worked the handle, not expecting anything, but after a few rusty groans, water sputtered out cold and clear. She tasted it carefully. No strange flavor, no chemical smell. It would do. She washed her face and hands, then filled the bucket to bring inside. Small victories. Water meant she could stay a while longer, at least until her body or the weather forced her to move on. Back in the small room, she sat on the cot and ate her last granola bar in tiny bites, trying to make it last. Then she reached for the leather journal she'd started reading the night before. Corinne's nursing journal documenting her daily work at the church clinic during the war years. The early entries were straightforward. Lists of patients, symptoms treated, supplies needed. But as Leah read deeper, a story emerged between the lines. January 1942, Mrs. Henderson brought her youngest in today. Crew sat with him for 3 hours, steam and careful watching. He'll be fine. She paid me with eggs and a loaf of bread. I told her it wasn't necessary, but she insisted. People here are proud. February 1942, Pastor Williams asked me to take on more hours. The men are leaving for the war, and there's no doctor in town anymore. Dr. Fletcher joined the Army Medical Corps last month. I'm doing what I can, but I'm only a nurse. Some conditions are beyond my training. I pray I don't make mistakes. March 1942, a soldier came to the clinic today. His name is James Whitfield. He was injured in a training accident. Broken collarbone, badly bruised ribs. The Hendersons took him in while he recovers. He has kind eyes and a good sense of humor, even through the pain. He thanked me 3 times for cleaning his wounds. Most men don't thank you at all. March 1942, James came back for a follow-up visit. His collarbone is healing well. We talked while I checked his bandages. He's from Virginia, joined up right after Pearl Harbor. He wants to be a teacher after the war. History, he said. He thinks understanding the past might help people avoid repeating it. I like the way he thinks. April 1942. James visits the clinic every few days now. His injuries are mostly healed, but he always finds a reason to stop by. Today he brought me coffee. Real coffee. Not the Corey substitute most people are drinking. He said a friend sent it from overseas. We sat on the church steps and talked for an hour. He makes me laugh. I can't remember the last time someone made me laugh. May 1942. I'm trying not to let my feelings show, but I think James knows anyway. He looks at me in a way that makes my breath catch. Yesterday he touched my hand when he was leaving. Just a brief moment, but I felt it all the way through. I know this is dangerous. He'll ship out soon. Getting attached is foolish, but my heart doesn't seem to care about wisdom. June 1942. James kissed me today. We were in the small garden behind the church, and he kissed me, gentle and careful, like he was asking a question. I answered yes. God help me. I answered yes to everything. July 1942. We're careful not to be seen together too much. People talk in small towns, and I can't afford gossip. But we meet when we can. Early mornings before anyone's awake, late evenings after the clinic closes. He tells me about his family, his dreams, the life he wants after the war. And I let myself believe in that life, in a future where I'm not alone. August 1942, James asked me to marry him. We were sitting by the creek and he just said it plain and direct. Marry me, Karen. When the war is over, marry me. I said yes. Of course I said yes. He doesn't have a ring, but he gave me a button from his uniform jacket. I keep it in my pocket, touch it a dozen times a day. Proof that this is real. September 1942, James shipped out today. I watched him leave from the church steps, too far away for him to see me. But I couldn't stand to be inside. He turned back once, like he knew I was watching. I held up my hand. He held up his, then he was gone. I came back to my room and cried for an hour. Then I wrote him a letter, the first of many I planned to send. I told him to be careful to come back to me, to remember that someone is waiting. October 1942, I've sent 3 letters and received none back. I know mail is slow from overseas. Unreliable, but I check every day anyway. Pastor Williams asks if I'm feeling well. I tell him I'm fine, just tired. The work keeps me busy, which is a blessing. If I had time to think too much, I'd go mad with worry. November 1942, still no letters. I'm trying not to panic. Mrs. Henderson says her nephew went months without writing, then sent 6 letters all at once. The mail is chaos over there, she says. I hold on to that. I hold on to everything James told me, every promise he made. I have to believe he's coming back. December 1942, I missed my monthly cycle. I've been feeling sick in the mornings. I know what this means. I'm pregnant. James's child, a child. I should be terrified. I'm terrified. But underneath the fear is something else. Joy, hope, a piece of James growing inside me. Proof that what we had was real. January 1943, still no word from James. I'm starting to show. I've let out my dresses as much as I can. Wear my coat even indoors. So far, no one has noticed, or if they have, they're being kind enough not to say anything. But I can't hide this much longer. I need to tell someone. I need help. But who can I trust with this? In February 1943, I told Pastor Williams I had to. The secret was getting too big to carry alone. He was kinder than I expected. Disappointed, yes, but not cruel. He said we'd figure something out, that there were agencies that helped girls in my situation. I hate that phrase, my situation. As if love and a baby and a man at war are just a problem to be solved. March 1943, the telegram came today. James is dead. Killed in action in France. The words don't make sense. I keep reading them thinking I've misunderstood, but they say the same thing every time. James Whitfield, guilt in action, regrets, as if regret means anything when someone is gone. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be pregnant and alone and grieving all at once. The baby moves inside me, and I feel such a confusing mix of love and despair. This child is all I have left of James, and I have to give it away. Leah closed the journal, her vision blurred with tears. She understood now, understood the weight Karen had carried, the impossible choice she'd faced. Love and loss twisted together. No good options, just survival. She thought about her own situation. No James, but also no great love lost. Just a man who'd said pretty words and disappeared. In some ways that was easier. She hadn't lost anything she'd really had, but the loneliness was the same. The fear was the same. And the question, how do you bring a child into the world when you have nothing to give them? That was the same too. Leah stood and walked through the sanctuary, her footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. This was where Karen had worked, had loved, had suffered, where she'd given birth and given away her daughter in the same breath. And somehow Leah had found her way back here, full circle, ready to face the same questions her grandmother had faced 80 years ago. But this time, she thought maybe the answer could be different. On the second day, Leah's hunger became impossible to ignore. She'd finished her water, refilled from the pump, but water alone wouldn't sustain her. She needed food. The baby needed food. She explored the church more thoroughly, searching for anything useful. In the pastor's old office, she found a metal lockbox pushed into a corner, rusted shut. She worked at it with a piece of broken chair leg until it finally gave way. Inside were a few old coins, a pair of reading glasses, and tucked beneath yellowed papers, a small silver locket. Leah lifted the locket carefully. It was tarnished, but beautiful with delicate engraving on the front. She pressed the tiny clasp and it opened. Inside, on one side was a photograph so small she had to squint to see it clearly. A young man in military uniform, serious-faced, but with warmth in his eyes. James Whitfield. It had to be. On the other side of the locket, a lock of fine baby hair, brown and impossibly soft. Leah's breath caught. Karen had kept this, had held on to a piece of the daughter she'd given away, carried it with her, kept it hidden in this church that she'd bought and preserved. The locket felt heavy in her palm, weighted with more than silver. She closed it carefully and slipped it into her pocket. Then she kept searching. In the storage room, behind stacks of old hymnals, she found a hollowed-out Bible. Inside were more letters. These ones different from the others, not addressed to anyone, just dated and carefully folded. The first one was dated 1946, 3 years after the birth. I came back today. The church is closed now. The congregation moved to the new building in town. But I bought the property. It's mine. I don't know what I'll do with it, but I couldn't stand the thought of strangers tearing it down or letting it rot. This is where you were born. This is where I said goodbye to you. It matters. I've been working in Tennessee, saving every penny I can. I went to 3 different adoption agencies, begged them to help me find you. They won't. The records are sealed. They say it's better this way, they say. Better for the child to have a fresh start. No confusion about who her real parents are. But I am your real parent. I carried you for 9 months. I held you for 1 hour. I know the sound of your first cry, the weight of you in my arms, the way your tiny fingers wrapped around mine. How does that not make me real? I won't give up. I'll keep looking. I'll keep hoping. Maybe when you're older, you'll come looking for me. Maybe you'll find this place and these letters, and you'll know that I never stopped loving you. The letters continued year after year, brief entries documenting Karen's life, her work as a nurse in various hospitals, her loneliness, her persistent search for the daughter she'd lost. Some years had multiple entries, some had only one, but they were all addressed the same way to my daughter or to the child I gave away. Or sometimes simply to you. Leah read them in chronological order, watching her grandmother age on paper. The handwriting grew more confident, then shakier again in the later years. The hope in the early letters gradually faded into resignation, though the love never diminished. M55, I'm 36 now. 12 years since you were born. You'd be starting to become your own person now, developing interests, opinions, dreams. I wonder what kind of girl you are. Quiet or loud, studious or adventurous? Do you look like me? Like your father? Do you ever wonder about where you came from? 960. I visited the church today. I do that sometimes, maybe twice a year. I sit in the sanctuary and remember the building is deteriorating without care, but the bones are still strong. Like me, I suppose, weathered but standing. 1965, I met a man who wanted to marry me. A good man, kind and patient, but I couldn't do it. How do you build a life with someone when you're still holding on to a ghost? He deserved better than half a heart. Everyone does in 1968. I'm sick. Cancer. The doctor says it's advanced. I have months, maybe less. I'm writing this final set of letters for you, or for your daughter if you had one. For whoever finds this place and wants to know the story, all I want you to understand is this. You were wanted. You were loved. Giving you away wasn't a choice. It was the only option I had in a world that gave me none. If I could go back, if I could do it differently, I would fight harder. I would find a way, but I was young and alone and terrified. And I made the best decision I could with the tools I had. Please don't think you weren't worth fighting for. You were worth everything. You still are. The church is yours now. I've arranged it legally. The deed will transfer to you or your descendants if you ever come forward. Take it. Make it something. Make it matter. And if you have children of your own, tell them about love. Tell them that mistakes are just moments, but love is forever. Tell them their great-grandmother thought about them even before they existed, hoped for them, prayed they'd have everything I couldn't give you. I love you. I always have. I always will. Forgive me if you can. That was the last entry. The final words, Karen had written before the cancer took her. Leah sat in the dust and dim light of the storage room, holding these fragile pages, and felt the full weight of her inheritance. Not just a building, a legacy. 3 generations of women, each trying to break a cycle they didn't know how to escape. Her mother had never found these letters, had died not knowing she was loved, not knowing Karen had spent her whole life searching. The tragedy of it felt unbearable, but Leah had found them. And she was still alive, still pregnant, still had a chance to do what Karen couldn't, keep her daughter, raise her, give her the security and love that had been missing from their family for 2 generations. She just had to figure out how. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the church windows gold and amber. Leah's stomach cramped with hunger. She needed to eat, needed to find food somehow. She tucked the letters carefully back into the hollowed Bible, along with the locket. These were precious now, evidence of her grandmother's life, proof of her claim to this place. She'd need them. Tomorrow she decided she'd walk into town. There had to be a town nearby. The church hadn't existed in a vacuum. She'd find someone, ask for help, maybe find work. It was risky. She looked like what she was, homeless, pregnant, desperate. But she didn't have a choice. The baby needed food. That was the only fact that mattered. She went outside to the pump, washed her face and hands in the cold water, and watched the last light fade from the sky. The mountains were dark shapes against the dimming blue. The air smelled like pine and wood smoke from some distant chimney. Leah put her hand on her belly, felt the baby shift and settle. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "I don't know how yet, but we will be. Your great-grandmother survived. Your grandmother survived. We will too." The words felt like a prayer, like a promise, like the only truth she had to hold on to in the gathering dark. The walk into town took longer than Leah expected. The dirt road wound through thick forest for nearly 2 miles before meeting a paved highway, then another mile along the shoulder before houses began to appear. Small places, mostly old farmhouses with peeling paint, single-wide trailers. A few newer homes set back from the road. Leah kept her head down and walked steadily, trying to look purposeful rather than lost. Her canvas bag hung from one shoulder. She'd washed her face and hair as best she could at the pump, changed into her cleanest shirt, but she knew she still looked rough, worn, like someone who'd been sleeping in an abandoned church because she had nowhere else to go. The town itself was small, maybe 3,000 people if you counted the surrounding countryside. Main Street ran for 6 blocks, lined with brick storefronts from another era. A hardware store, a diner, a post office, a dollar store, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers stood out. Leah stopped at the diner first. Through the window, she could see a dozen customers scattered among the booze and counter stools. The smell of coffee and bacon made her stomach clench with hunger. She had $7 left from her last paycheck, carefully rationed. Enough for something small. She pushed through the door. Conversations paused, heads turned. She felt the weight of their attention, the quick assessment. Pregnant, alone, not from here. A waitress in her 60s approached, wiping her hands on her apron. Her name tag read, Dottie. Her expression was neutral, professionally polite. "Help you, hun." "Just coffee, please," Leah said. "And do you know if anyone's hiring around here?" Doy's eyebrows rose slightly. "Hiring for what? Anything. I'm a nurse, or I was, but I'll do whatever's available. Cleaning, cooking, whatever you need." The waitress studied her for a long moment. "Take a seat at the counter. I'll get you that coffee." Leah sat on a worn vinyl stool and tried not to notice the continued attention from the other customers. A man in a feed store cap muttered something to his companion. An elderly woman stared openly, her expression somewhere between concern and disapproval. Doy returned with coffee and unexpectedly a plate of eggs and toast. "On the house," she said before Leah could protest. "You look like you need it more than a lecture." Leah's eyes burned with sudden tears. "Thank you, don't thank me yet. Eat first, then we'll talk." Leah ate slowly, trying not to wolf down the food despite her hunger. The eggs were perfectly cooked, the toast buttered and warm. Each bite felt like a gift. When she'd finished, Doy refilled her coffee and leaned against the counter. "So, nurse, you said 12 years at Mission Hospital in Asheville. Lost my position in budget cuts 6 months ago and ended up here because Leah hesitated. How much to tell? How much truth could she afford? I'm looking for a fresh start, somewhere quiet to have my baby and figure out what comes next." Doy nodded slowly. "You got family around here in a way?" Leah pulled out the photograph of Karen, the one from 1942. "This is my grandmother. She worked at the old white church up County Road 14. I'm trying to learn more about her." Doy took the photograph, studied it closely. "Karen Montrose," she said, and Leah's heart jumped. "Lord, I haven't thought about her in years. I was just a girl when all that happened, but people talked about it for ages after." "You knew her?" "Not personally. My mother did, though. Karen nursed my brother through scarlet fever when he was little. My mother always spoke well of her, even after." Doy paused, choosing her words carefully. "Even after the trouble. The baby," Leah said quietly. "My mother," Dottie's expression softened. "So you know about that. I found her letters in the church. She bought the property before she died and left it to her descendants. I think that means it's mine now." "That old church." I looked surprised. "I didn't know anyone owned it. It's been sitting empty for decades. My grandmother owned it, and if I can prove I'm her granddaughter, I own it now." An old man at the end of the counter spoke up. "You're staying out there." His voice was rough, but not unkind. "For now, yes. Place has got to be falling apart." "It needs work," Leo admitted. "But the bones are good. The roof holds. There's water from the pump," the man grunted, considering. "Horace," he said, extending a weathered hand. "I take care of the cemetery next to that church. Been doing it for 40 years. Leah shook his hand, feeling the calluses, the strength. "Leah Montrose, Horace repeated. "I knew your grandmother a little. I was maybe 10 when she left. My mother was sick that winter, pneumonia, and Karen came to our house every day for a week, sat with her, made sure she took her medicine, wouldn't accept a penny for it. After Karen had to leave town, my mother cried, said it was a shame how people treated her. Why did she buy the church and then never come back?" Horace shrugged. "I don't know the whole story, but I know she came back once, maybe 1945 or so, bought the property from the county, then she left again. Some people said she couldn't bear to stay. Too many bad memories. Some said she was waiting for her daughter to find her. Either way, she never came back that I saw." Leah felt something loosen in her chest. Someone remembered Karen kindly. Someone had been paying attention. "If you're staying out there," Horace continued, "you'll need supplies. Wood for the stove, proper food, maybe some help fixing the place up. I don't have money for that. Didn't ask for money." Horace drained his coffee cup and stood. "I've got tools, got time, and I don't like seeing that church fall down. If you're Karen's granddaughter and you're going to fix it up, I'll help." Leah stared at him, not quite believing. "Why would you do that?" "Because your grandmother was kind to my mother when kindness mattered. I don't forget things like that. He pulled a worn wallet from his back pocket and extracted a business card, handwritten, not printed. That's my number. I'm usually at the cemetery mornings. You need something, you call? He nodded to Doy and left, the bell above the door chiming. Doy smiled. Horus is a good man. Doesn't talk much, but when he says he'll do something, he does it. I can't believe. Leah's voice broke. I've been alone for so long. I don't know how to accept help. Well, you'd better learn. Doy patted her hand. This town's got problems like any other, but we take care of our own. If you're Karen's kin, you're part of our history. That means something here, Leah wiped her eyes. Is there anywhere I could work, even part-time? I need to save money, prepare for the baby, Doy considered. Doc Alvarez runs the county health clinic. He's always complaining about being short-staffed. You being a nurse, maybe he'd have something. Want me to call him? Would you? Sure, give me a minute. Doy disappeared into the back. Leah sat at the counter holding her cooling coffee, feeling the first real stirring of hope she'd had in months. Maybe this could work. Maybe she'd found a place where her grandmother's memory meant something, where being Karen's granddaughter was an asset rather than a burden. Maybe she'd found home. Doy returned 5 minutes later with a phone number written on a napkin. He'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 Wa. Clinic's 3 blocks that way. She pointed east. Can't promise he'll hire you, but he'll at least talk to you. Thank you, Leah said. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. Doc Alvarez is particular, but he's fair. You show up on time, tell him what you can do. You might have a chance. Leah left the diner with the napkin in her pocket and enough hope to carry her back. Through the long walk to the church, Dr. Marcus Alvarez hired her on the spot. He was a compact man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes. The county health clinic occupied a renovated house on the edge of town. 3 examination rooms, a small pharmacy, a waiting area that doubled as the receptionist's office. The whole place smelled like antiseptic and coffee. I've been running this clinic alone for 2 years, he told Leah after reviewing her credentials. My last nurse moved to Charlotte for better pay. Can't blame her. This place doesn't pay much, but if you're willing to work 20 hours a week at $12 an hour, the position's yours. 20 hours. Sandrov? That was $240 a week before taxes. Not much, but it was something. It was a beginning. When can I start? How about now? I've got 15 patients scheduled today, and I'm already running behind. Leah worked her first shift in clothes she'd worn for 3 days, but she knew her job. Taking vitals, preparing exam rooms, drawing blood, administering vaccines. The skills came back like muscle memory. By the end of the day, Dr. Alvarez was visibly relieved. You're good, he said as they closed up. Really good. Where'd you train? At Mission Hospital. I worked ICU for 8 years, then pediatrics, and you ended up here because life happened. Lisa touched her belly. Sometimes you land where you land, he nodded, accepting the non-answer. You need an advance on your first paycheck. The offer surprised her. I don't want to impose. It's not an imposition. You're 6 months pregnant, sleeping in an abandoned church, and you just worked 8 hours without complaining once. I confront you 100 until Friday. Leah felt tears threaten again. Thank you. He counted out 5 20s from his wallet. Get yourself some food, some basic supplies. And Leah, if you need help with anything, prenatal care or whatever, you tell me. We'll figure it out. That evening, Leah walked to the dollar store with money in her pocket for the first time in weeks. She bought carefully canned soup, crackers, peanut butter, bread, apples, a gallon of water, basic toiletries, a flashlight with batteries, a cheap blanket. The total came to $63. She had enough left over to last until her first real paycheck. Walking back to the church in the fading light, groceries weighing down her bag, Leah felt something shift inside her. Not the baby, though she was moving too, a constant flutter and roll, but something in herself, a sense of capability returning. She'd found work. She'd found help. She was building something. Over the next 2 weeks, a rhythm emerged. She worked 3 days a week at the clinic, learning Dr. Alvarez's routines, meeting the patients, mostly older folks with chronic conditions, young families who couldn't afford private doctors, occasional emergencies. The work was meaningful in a way her hospital job had never quite been. Here she knew everyone. Every patient had a story. Every treatment mattered personally. On her days off, Horace appeared at the church with tools and supplies. He fixed the wood stove in the small room, brought cords of split firewood, repaired loose boards in the floor. He worked mostly in silence, but his presence was steady and reassuring. "You don't have to do all this," and Leah told him on the third day, watching him replace rotted siding on the church's north wall. "I know I don't have to," he hammered in another nail, "but it needs doing and I've got time. Besides, I like this old place. It's been here longer than most of us. Seems right to help it stand a while longer." Other people from town started showing up too. Doy brought a box of dishes and utensils. "Found these in my basement. Been meaning to get rid of them anyway." An old woman named Pauline dropped off a bag of maternity clothes. "My daughter left these when she moved. You might as well use them." A retired carpenter named Bill showed up one morning with windows he'd salvaged from a demolished house. "Heard you might need these. I'll help you install them if you want." Slowly the church transformed. The worst of the decay was addressed. The building became weatherproof again. Leah cleaned obsessively, sweeping, scrubbing, organizing. The sanctuary started to feel less like a ruin and more like a space that could be lived in. In the evenings, by candlelight, and later by the light of an old lamp Horace had wired up, Leah continued reading Karen's letters. The bundle she'd found in the hollowed Bible contained dozens more years of entries, a record of a life lived in the shadow of loss. 57 years now you'd be starting school. I wonder if you're a good student. If you like books the way I did, if anyone reads to you at night. I used to imagine doing that. Reading you stories, tucking you in, kissing your forehead. Ordinary things that would have meant everything. 1956. I saw a girl today who might have been you. 13, brown hair, walking with a woman who might have been her mother. They were laughing together. The girl looked happy. I stood there on the sidewalk, watching them disappear into a store, and I felt such a complicated mix of grief and gratitude. Grief that it wasn't me with you. Gratitude that maybe somewhere you have that kind of happiness. In 62, I've stopped looking so actively. The agencies won't help. The courts won't help. The system is designed to keep us apart, but I still hope. Every brown-haired girl I see, every young woman who might be the right age, I look for something familiar. Your father's eyes, my stubborn chin, some mark that says, here she is. Your daughter, but I never find it. 1967, I bought a small house in Tennessee. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I thought about selling the church property. It just sits there deteriorating, but I can't do it. It's the only connection I have to you, the place where you came into the world. Giving that up would feel like giving up on you, and I promised myself I'd never do that. 9/68. This is probably my last entry. The cancer is aggressive. The doctors are kind, but honest. I have weeks, not months. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm only afraid of leaving this world without knowing if you're okay. Without knowing if you ever thought about me. Without being able to tell you face to face that I loved you, that I never wanted to let you go. If you find these letters, you or your children or their children, please know this. You come from love. You come from people who tried their best in a world that wasn't kind to them. You come from strength and stubbornness and the refusal to give up, even when giving up would have been easier. Take the church, make it yours. Build something there that lasts, and know that somewhere, somehow, I'm proud of you. Leah closed the journal and sat in the quiet. Outside, a late autumn wind rattled the windows Horace had installed. The wood stove crackled softly. The baby shifted and settled. She put her hand on her belly and spoke aloud to Karen, to her mother, to all the women who'd come before her. I found them. I found your letters, and I'm here. I'm making it something, I promise. The church seemed to settle around her as if hearing, as if holding her in the embrace of its old walls. For the first time since leaving Asheville, Leah felt like she belonged somewhere, like she had a place to stand and build from, like she was home. Leah found the documents on a Thursday afternoon in late November. She'd been organizing the basement, a dank space filled with water-stained boxes and forgotten church records. Horace had offered to help, but she'd wanted to do it herself. to understand every corner of the building that was slowly becoming hers. Most of the boxes contained mundane items, old service bulletins, financial records from the 1960s, moth-eaten choir robes. But one box, tucked in the far corner behind a stack of rotting hymnals, held something different. Legal documents, recent ones. Leah carried the box upstairs into better light and began sorting through the contents. Property tax notices dating back to 1968, the year Karen died. The taxes had been paid regularly until 1970, then stopped. After that, the notices piled up. Warnings, demands, final notices, decades of accumulated debt. Near the bottom of the box, a certified letter dated 3 months ago. Leah opened it with shaking hands. Notice of tax foreclosure and adverse possession claim. Property located at 1847, County Road 14, owner of record estate of Karen Montrose, deceased, Glantment Mountain Vista Development LLC. This property has been identified for seizure due to unpaid taxes totaling 4732867. Interested parties have 30 days from the date of this notice to contest the claim. Failure to respond will result in automatic transfer of ownership to the claimant. The date on the letter was August 15th. It was now November 21st. The 30-day window had closed months ago. Leah's vision blurred. She read the document again, then a third time, hoping she'd misunderstood, but the words stayed the same. A development company had filed to seize the church. The legal process was nearly complete. Unless someone contested the claim, and no one had, the property would transfer to Mountain Vista Development within weeks. She would lose everything. The church, her home, the one piece of her grandmother's legacy that remained. Leah sat on the floor of the sanctuary, the letter trembling in her hands, and felt despair wash over her. She'd been so focused on surviving day to day, on finding work and making the place livable, that she'd never thought to check if the property was actually secure. She'd assumed that because Karen had owned it, because the deed existed, it was safe. But unpaid taxes changed everything, and she'd been too naive, too desperate to see it coming. The baby kicked hard as if protesting. Leah put her hand on her belly. "I know," she whispered. "I know, I'm sorry." She sat there until the light faded, trying to think through the panic. Then she gathered the documents and walked the 2 miles into town. Dr. Alvarez was still at the clinic finishing paperwork. "Leah, what's wrong?" She showed him the letter, her hands still shaking. He read it slowly, his expression darkening. "Mountain Vista," he said, disgust evident in his voice. "They've been buying up properties all over the county. They find old places with tax problems, file adverse possession claims, then demolish everything and build vacation homes for rich people from Atlanta. Can they really take the church? If the taxes haven't been paid in over 50 years, he sighed. "Yeah, they probably can. Unless you can prove you're the legal heir and contest the claim. How do I do that? You'd need documentation showing your relationship to Karen, birth certificates, adoption records, genealogical proof. Then you'd need to file a formal contest with the county court. And you'd probably need a lawyer." Leah's throat tightened. "I don't have money for a lawyer. I barely have money for food." "I know." Dr. Alvarez rubbed his face. "Let me make some calls. There might be legal aid options. Pruno attorneys who handle this kind of thing. But Leah, you need to understand this is going to be difficult. Mountain Vista has lawyers on retainer. They're good at what they do. So, I'm just supposed to give up. Let them take it." "I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to be realistic about what you're up against." Leah left the clinic, feeling hollowed out. She walked past the diner, closed now, dark, and kept going to the cemetery where Horace was usually working. She found him near the back, tending to a grave marker. He looked up when she approached, took one look at her face, and set down his tools. "What happened?" She told him everything. The documents, the tax debt, Mountain Vista's claim. When she finished, Horace's weathered face had gone hard. "I knew they were circling this area. They already took the Johnsons' farm last year, the Parkers' place before that. They come in, wave money around, push through legal processes most people don't understand." He paused. "You going to fight them?" "How? I have nothing. No proof of who I am. No money, no leverage. You have the letters. You have Karen's journal. That's proof, is it? I don't even know if my mother was officially Karen's daughter. The adoption was closed. The records are sealed. Horace considered this. There's a woman in town, Leah Brennan. She was the county clerk for 40 years before she retired. She knows everything about every piece of property, every birth and death, every document filed in this county since 1960. If anyone can help you trace your lineage, it's her. Would she help me? Only one way to find out. That evening, Horace drove Leah to Leah's house, a tidy bungalow on a quiet street lined with oak trees. Leah answered the door in a cardigan and reading glasses, looking every bit the retired bureaucrat. But her eyes were sharp, and when Horace explained the situation, she invited them in without hesitation. "Mountain Vista," she said, settling into a worn armchair. "Those vultures, they've been destroying this county's character piece by piece." "Sit down, both of you. Tell me everything." Leah laid out the story. Karen, the church, the letters, her mother's adoption. Leah listened intently, occasionally asking questions, her fingers steepled under her chin. When Leah finished, Leah was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood. "Wait here." She disappeared into a back room and returned carrying several thick binders. "I'm not supposed to have these. Technically, they're county property. But when I retired, I made copies of certain records, the ones I thought might be important someday." She opened one binder. Births and adoptions, 1940 to 1950. She flipped through pages, found what she was looking for, and turned it toward Leah. There, April 15th, 1943, female infant born to Karen Montrose. Adoption finalized. June 1943, adoptive parents Harold and Louise Garrett. Child's name changed to Anne Garrett. Leah stared at the document. Her mother's original birth record. Proof that Anne was Karen's daughter. You can't show this to me. This is illegal." Leah smiled faintly. "I didn't show you anything. You saw it by accident while I was looking for something else. But hypothetically, if you needed proof of lineage, you'd need your mother's death certificate showing her maiden name was Garrett, your birth certificate showing you're Anne Garrett's daughter, and this adoption record showing Anne Garrett was born to Karen Montrose. Chain of evidence, clear line of descent. I have my birth certificate and my mother's death certificate. I kept them in my bag. Then you have what you need to establish standing. Then you just need to file the paperwork and find a lawyer willing to take on Mountain Vista." Horace leaned forward. "There's a woman in Asheville, Gwen Talbot. She handles land rights cases. She sued Mountain Vista before and won. Would she take a case like this? She might, especially if there's a human interest angle. Pregnant woman fighting to keep her grandmother's church. That's the kind of story that gets attention. Die Klosterbinder. You have about 2 weeks before Mountain Vista's claim becomes final. If you're going to fight this, you need to move fast." Leah felt the weight of it pressing down, the time constraint, the complexity, the sheer impossibility of taking on a corporation with a team of lawyers when she had nothing but old letters and the help of kind strangers. But she thought about Karen, alone and pregnant, facing a town that wanted her gone. She'd survived. She'd fought in her own way. She'd left behind a legacy. Leah put her hand on her belly, felt her daughter moving, and made her decision. "I'll fight them," she said. "I don't know how, but I will. This place is mine. It's my daughter's, and I'm not letting them take it." Gwen Talbot agreed to meet with Leah on the condition that she drive to Asheville. "I don't come to you," she'd said on the phone. "You come to me. If you're serious about this, you'll make the trip." Horace drove her. They left before dawn. The old truck rattling along mountain roads as the sun rose over the ridges. Leah clutched a folder containing everything she had. Birth certificates, death certificates, Karen's letters, the adoption record Leah had accidentally let her see, photographs, the property deed. Gwen's office was in a renovated warehouse downtown. 3rd floor, her name stenkled on the frosted glass door. She was younger than Leah expected, maybe 40, with short grey hair and the kind of direct gaze that said she didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Show me what you have." Leah spread the documents across the conference table. Gwen examined each one methodically, making notes, asking questions. When she got to the adoption record, she raised an eyebrow. Where did you get this? A friend showed it to me. This is a sealed record. It shouldn't exist outside official channels, I know. Gwen studied Leah for a long moment, then nodded. I'll pretend I didn't hear that, but understand we can't use this document directly. We'll need to petition the court to unseal the adoption records officially. That takes time. How much time? Weeks? Maybe months? I don't have months. Mountain Vista's claim finalizes in less than 2 weeks. Gwen sat back in her chair. Then we need to file an emergency injunction. Stop the transfer until you can establish standing. But I have to be honest with you, this is a long shot. Mountain Vista has deep pockets. They've been doing this for years. They're very good at it. So I should just give up? I didn't say that. I'm saying you need to understand the odds. Gwen tapped the property deed. Your grandmother bought this property in 1945 and died in 1968. The taxes haven't been paid since. That's 57 years of accumulated debt. Even if you prove lineage and win the right to keep the property, you'll owe those back taxes plus interest and penalties. How much? Could be 60,000, could be more. The number hit Leah like a physical blow. I don't have that kind of money. I'm making $12 an hour working part-time at a county clinic. I know, but there might be options. Public interest funds, crowdfunding, community support. If we can generate enough attention, make this a story about a corporation bullying a pregnant woman out of her family's heritage, people respond to that. I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's people deciding what kind of community they want to live in. Mountain Vista has been pushing locals out for years. Your case could be the one that finally pushes back. Leah looked at the documents spread across the table. Her whole history, her grandmother's life, reduced to paper and stamps and official seals. What do I need to do? First, we file the emergency injunction today. That buys us time. Then we petition to unseal your mother's adoption records that establishes your legal standing as Karen's heir. Simultaneously, we challenge Mountain Vista's adverse possession claim on the grounds that you were actively attempting to claim your inheritance, but didn't know about the property's status. That's a stretch, but it might work. And if it doesn't, then you lose the church. Gwen's voice was matter-of-fact, not unkind. I won't lie to you. This is an uphill battle, but I've won cases like this before. Not many, but some. And I really hate Mountain Vista, so I'm willing to try if you are. What about your fee? Pro bono. I take a few of these cases every year. This qualifies. Gwen started gathering the documents. Give me 2 hours to draft the injunction. Then we'll file with the county court and see what happens. The filing took all day. Gwen moved through the courthouse with practiced efficiency, speaking to clerks, filing forms, arguing politely but firmly with the judges clear, who tried to claim they'd missed the deadline. By late afternoon, they had their injunction temporary, good for 30 days, enough to stop Mountain Vista from taking possession while the court considered Leah's claim. This is just the beginning, Gwen warned as they left the courthouse. They'll fight back hard. You need to be ready for that. On the drive back to the church, Horace was quiet until they were almost home. Then he said, "You did good today. Gurin would be proud. I haven't won anything yet. You showed up. You fought. That's something." Word spread through town quickly. By the next morning, when Leah arrived at the clinic, Dr. Alvarez had already heard. "Di told me," he said you got an injunction filed. That's something. It's temporary. I still have to prove I'm Corin's heir, and even then, I owe more in back taxes than I could earn in 5 years. One problem at a time. He handed her a coffee. "Also, there's a reporter here to see you from the local paper." Joy may have called her. The reporter was a woman named Rachel Kim, late 20s, keen-eyed and carrying a digital recorder. "I heard about your case," she said. Woman fighting to keep her grandmother's church from being seized by a development company. That's a story people want to hear. Will you talk to me? Leah hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse to keep her struggle private. But she thought about what Gwen had said. Public attention could help. Public support could make the difference. "Okay," she said. "I'll talk to you." They sat in the clinic's small break room and Leah told her story. All of it. Losing her job, the pregnancy, finding the church, discovering Karen's letters. Rachel listened intently. taking notes, occasionally asking questions that showed she understood the deeper implications. "This isn't just about one building," Rachel said. "It's about what kind of place we want this county to be. Mountain Vista has been displacing people for years. Someone needs to push back. I'm not trying to be a symbol. I just want to keep my home." "I understand that, but sometimes personal stories become something bigger. Would you be willing to let me take some photos?" "See the church, the letters," Leah agreed. That afternoon, she and Rachel drove out to the church. Rachel photographed everything. The building's exterior, the sanctuary with its patched windows and worn pews, the small room where Leah slept, the box containing Corinne's letters. "These are incredible," Rachel said, carefully examining a letter. "This is living history. Your grandmother's story deserves to be told." The article ran 3 days later. Front page of the local paper with the headline, "Pregnant Woman Fights Developer for Family Church." Rachel had written it well, factual but emotional, highlighting Karen's story, Leah's journey, and the broader pattern of Mountain Vista's acquisitions. The response was immediate. The newspaper office received dozens of calls and emails. People showed up at the church, some just to offer support, others bringing donations. Money started coming in. Small amounts, mostly 20, 50, but it added up. A local contractor offered to do repairs at cost. A lawyer called to say he'd help Gwen Pruno. By the end of the week, Leah had received over $3,000 in donations, messages of support from across the county, and a request from a regional news station to do a story. "This is getting bigger than you," Horace observed, watching another car pull up with supplies. "People are invested now. I don't know how to handle this." "You don't have to handle it alone. That's the point." The regional news story aired on a Friday evening. Leah watched it at Doy's Diner, surrounded by people from town. The segment was 5 minutes long. Interviews with Leah, Gwen, Horace and Doy, footage of the church, excerpts from Karen's letters read by the anchor. It painted Mountain Vista as the villain and Leah as the underdog, fighting for her family's legacy. By Monday morning, the story had gone viral. National news outlets picked it up. A crowdfunding campaign someone had started without Leah's permission raised $40,000 in 3 days. Her inbox, she'd been given access to a computer at the clinic, filled with messages from strangers offering support, sharing their own stories of displacement, expressing anger at corporate greed. "You've become a symbol," Gwen told her during a phone call. "Whether you wanted to or not, the court hearing is in 10 days. Mountain Vista is going to come at this hard. They don't like bad publicity, and you've given them a lot of it. They'll try to make you look unstable, irresponsible, unfit to maintain the property. What do? You show up. You tell your story clearly and calmly. You let the facts speak for themselves, and you trust that the judge will see through their tactics. And if that's not enough, then we appeal. We keep fighting. But Leah, we have a real chance now. The public support, the money, the attention that changes the equation. Mountain Vista can't just steamroll you anymore. People are watching." Lisa hung up and sat in the quiet of the church. Outside, she could hear Horace working on the roof, fixing shingles. Inside, the wood stove crackled. Her baby shifted and rolled, active now in the 7th month. She put her hand on her belly and thought about Karen, alone and pregnant, facing a town's judgment with no one to help her. And she thought about herself now, still pregnant, still facing long odds, but not alone anymore, surrounded by people who believed in her, who wanted her to win. "We're going to make it," she whispered to her daughter. "One way or another, we're going to make it." The hearing was 10 days away. Everything she'd fought for hung in the balance. But for the first time since finding the church, Leah felt like she had a real chance. Not a guarantee, just a chance. And sometimes that was enough. The courthouse was packed. Leah hadn't expected that. She'd imagined a quiet hearing, a judge reviewing documents, maybe a few spectators. Instead, the gallery was filled. People from town, reporters, supporters who'd driven in from neighboring counties. Someone had organized a petition, and they presented it to the Clear that morning. Over 200 signatures from local residents opposing Mountain Vista's acquisition. Leah sat at the plaintiff's table beside Gwen, her hands folded over her pregnant belly. She dressed as professionally as she could, borrowed dress pants from Doy, a clean blouse, her hair pulled back. She wanted to look stable, responsible, not like someone who'd been homeless and desperate. Just 2 months ago, across the aisle, Mountain Vista's legal team occupied their table. 3 lawyers in expensive suits, leather briefcases open, documents stacked precisely. They looked like exactly what they were, corporate professionals used to winning. Judge Harold Brennan, no relation to Dia, entered, and everyone stood. He was an older man, maybe 70, with white hair and a stern expression that gave nothing away. He settled behind the bench and reviewed the documents before him. "This is a hearing regarding the property located at 1847 County Road 14, he began. Mountain Vista Development LLC has filed for adverse possession based on unpaid property taxes. Leah Montrose has filed an emergency injunction claiming she is the legal heir to the property. We're here to determine if Ms. Montrose has standing to contest the claim and whether the adverse possession should proceed." He looked at Gwen. "Counselor, you may present your case." Gwen stood composed and clear. "Thank you, Your Honor. We are here today because of a fundamental question of justice. My client, Leah Montrose, is the granddaughter of Karen Montrose, who purchased the church property in 1945. Karen died in 1968, intending for the property to pass to her descendants. Due to circumstances beyond her control, sealed adoption records, family separation, and years of searching, Ms. Montrose only recently discovered her inheritance. She shouldn't be penalized for not knowing about a property she had no way of knowing existed. Gwen presented the documents methodically. Karen's death certificate. The property deed's death certificate listing her maiden name as Garrett. Leah's birth certificate showing her as Anne's daughter. And finally, the petition to unseal the adoption records, which had been granted by the court 3 days earlier, officially confirming that Anne Garrett was born as the daughter of Karen Montrose. The chain of inheritance is clear. Gwen said Karen Montrose to Anne Garrett to Leah Montrose. "My client is the rightful heir. She's been living on the property for 2 months, making repairs, establishing residence. She's demonstrated clear intent to claim her inheritance." Judge Brennan studied the documents. "What about the unpaid taxes?" 57 years of accumulated debt is substantial. "We acknowledge the tax debt," Gwen said, "but Ms. Montrose is prepared to address it. She secured employment, generated community support, and established a payment plan with the county tax assessor's office. The debt can be resolved without seizure." The judge turned to Mountain Vista's lead attorney. "Your response?" The attorney stood, a tall man named Richard Pierce, confident and dismissive. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case. The law is clear on adverse possession. When taxes go unpaid for decades, the county has the right to seize the property. Mountain Vista filed in good faith, followed all proper procedures, and should not be penalized because someone suddenly appeared claiming to be the heir." He gestured dismissively toward Leah. "Ms. Montrose's story is sympathetic, but sympathy isn't law. She has no documented claim to the property until 3 days ago, when adoption records were unsealed. Before that, she was a homeless woman squatting in an abandoned building. The fact that she's pregnant and has generated media attention doesn't change the legal realities." Leah felt anger flare at his words. Homeless squatting. But Gwen touched her arm gently, a reminder to stay calm. Pierce continued. "Furthermore, even if the court accepts her claim to the property, she lacks the financial means to maintain it. The building is in severe disrepair. The tax debt exceeds $60,000. She's working part-time for minimum wage. This isn't a sustainable situation. Mountain Vista, on the other hand, has the resources to properly maintain the property and contribute to the county's tax base. So your argument is that wealth should determine ownership." Judge Brennan's voice was dry. "No, Your Honor, our argument is that the law has procedures for a reason. Mountain Vista followed those procedures. To overturn our claim now would set a dangerous precedent." The judge was quiet for a moment. "I'd like to hear from Ms. Montrose directly. Miss Montrose, would you approach the witness stand?" Leah's heart hammered. She stood carefully, walked to the stand, and was sworn in. The judge looked at her with eyes that seemed to see everything. Tell me why you believe you should keep this property, he said. In your own words. Leah took a breath. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. She thought about Karen, about her mother, about the daughter growing inside her, and she began to speak. Your Honor, Leah began, her voice steadier than she felt. I didn't know about this church until 2 months ago. I didn't know my grandmother bought it. Didn't know she spent her life trying to find her daughter. My mother didn't know any of it. My mother died 5 years ago believing she was unwanted. She grew up in foster care thinking her birth mother had thrown her away. That belief shaped her whole life. It shaped mine too. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The courtroom was silent, except for the soft scratch of a reporter's pen. I found the church by accident. Or maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe it was the only place I was supposed to end up. I was 6 months pregnant, broke, homeless. I'd lost everything. And then I walked through that door and found a box with my grandmother's name on it. And inside were letters. Dozens of letters she'd written to the daughter she gave away. Letters full of love and grief and a promise to never stop searching. Leah's voice cracked, but she pushed on. My grandmother bought that church because it was the place where her daughter was born. She kept it even though she couldn't live there, couldn't face the memories. She kept it because she hoped. She hoped that someday her daughter would find it, would know she was loved, would understand that being given away wasn't the same as being thrown away. She looked directly at Judge Brennan. My mother never got that. She died not knowing. But I found those letters. I found that proof of love. And I realized this isn't just about a building. It's about breaking a cycle. 3 generations of women in my family have been marked by loss and separation. My grandmother lost her daughter. My mother grew up without knowing where she came from. I grew up with a mother who didn't know how to show love because she'd never been shown it herself. Leah placed her hand on her belly. I'm pregnant 7 months now with a daughter of my own. And I looked at that church and those letters and I thought, this is where it ends. This is where we stop repeating the same pattern. This is where my daughter gets what none of us had. A home, a history, a place to belong. She felt tears, but didn't wipe them away. Mr. Pierce says I'm just a homeless woman squatting in a building. Maybe I was. But I'm also a nurse who's worked for 12 years helping people. I'm a granddaughter who's trying to honor a legacy. I'm a mother who's trying to give her child something better than what I had. And I'm asking this court to let me try. To let me keep the property my grandmother bought specifically so her descendants would have it. What about the tax debt? The judge asked. 60,000 is substantial. I have 43,000 raised through community donations. The county assessor has agreed to a payment plan for the rest. I'm working, I'm earning, and I'm committed to paying every penny owed. But I need time. I need the chance to make this right. Judge Brennan nodded slowly. Mr. Pierce, do you wish to cross-examine? Pierce stood. Ms. Montrose, you've only been at this property for 2 months. Before that, where were you? Walking, trying to survive, and the father of your child. Leah met his eyes. Not in the picture. So you're single, unemployed, except for part-time work, and you've been homeless. What makes you think you can maintain a property and raise a child? The same thing that made my grandmother think she could survive losing everything? Determination. The same thing that made her buy a church she couldn't afford to keep. Hope. I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for a chance. Pierce looked like he wanted to press further, but Judge Brennan interrupted. I think we've heard enough, unless there's additional testimony. Gwen stood. Your Honor, the community petition demonstrates significant local support for Ms. Montrose's claim. This property has historical and emotional significance beyond its assessed value. I've reviewed the petition. The judge closed the file in front of him. I'm going to take a 30-year nut recess to consider the evidence. We'll reconvene for my ruling. The courtroom erupted in quiet conversation. Leah returned to her seat feeling drained. Gwen squeezed her hand. You did well. Whatever happens now, you told your story. Is it enough? I don't know. But it was honest. That counts for something. The 30 minutes felt eternal. Leah sat, trying not to think, not to hope too much or fear too much, just to breathe and wait. Around her, supporters murmured encouragement. Di gave her a thumbs up. Horace nodded from his seat in the back row. Finally, the clear called them back. Judge Brennan returned to the bench, his expression unreadable. He settled into his chair, picked up a single sheet of paper and began to read. I've reviewed all evidence and testimony presented today. This case presents a conflict between legal procedure and human circumstances. The law is clear on adverse possession and tax foreclosure. However, the law also provides for judicial discretion when circumstances warrant. Leah held her breath. This was it. Everything balanced on whatever came next. In the matter of Mountain Vista Development versus the estate of Karen Montrose, I rule as follows. Ms. Montrose has established clear lineage to Karen Montrose through proper documentation. The unsealed adoption records confirm that Anne Garrett was Karen's daughter and Leah Montrose is Anne's daughter. This creates an unbroken chain of inheritance. Furthermore, Ms. Montrose has demonstrated good faith effort to claim and maintain the property. She has secured employment, established residence, and arranged for payment of the tax debt. Judge Brennan paused, looking at Mountain Vista's attorneys. Mountain Vista followed proper legal procedures in filing their claim. However, the spirit of adverse possession law is to address truly abandoned property, not to enable corporations to profit from family tragedies. This property was never abandoned. It was held in trust by a woman who hoped her descendants would one day find it. They have, he set down the paper. I'm ruling in favor of Leah Montrose. Mountain Vista's adverse possession claim is denied. The property at 1847 County Road 14 is awarded to Ms. Montrose as the legal heir of Karen Montrose. The tax debt is acknowledged and must be satisfied through the agreed-upon payment plan. Mountain Vista, you have the right to appeal this decision. The courtroom erupted. People stood applauding. Leah sat frozen, unable to quite believe what she'd heard. She'd won. The church was hers, legally, officially hers. Gwen was smiling, gathering papers. We did it. You did it. Leah felt tears streaming down her face. I can't believe it. Believe it. You're a property owner now. Congratulations. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded her. Cameras flashed. Questions came from every direction. Leah answered as best she could, overwhelmed by the attention, grateful when Horace and Doy created a protective barrier and helped her to Horace's truck. Let's get you home, Horace said. You've had enough excitement for one day. Home. The word felt real now in a way it hadn't before. Not just a place she was staying. Home. The next 3 months passed in a blur of preparation and transformation. The baby grew heavy inside her. The church continued its slow renovation. Community members showed up regularly with supplies, labor, and encouragement. By late February, the building was weatherproof, heated, and habitable. Not finished. There was still work to do, but livable. On March 15th, in the small room behind the altar where Karen had once lived and given birth, Leah went into labor. She'd planned to go to the hospital, but the baby had other ideas. The contractions came fast and hard, and by the time Dr. Alvarez arrived with a midwife named Sarah, it was clear there was no time to transport her. Looks like this baby wants to be born right here, Sarah said calmly, setting up supplies. Just like her great-grandmother. Leah labored through the afternoon, supported by Dr. Alvarez and Sarah, with Horace and Doy waiting anxiously in the sanctuary. When the sun was setting, painting the stained glass windows gold and red, her daughter was born, It'll be healthy, crying strongly. She's perfect, Sarah said, placing the baby on Leah's chest. Absolutely perfect. Leah looked down at her daughter's face, red and wrinkled and beautiful, and felt something shift inside her that was deeper than joy, deeper than relief. It was completion, the end of one story and the beginning of another. Karen, she whispered, touching her daughter's tiny hand. Karen Anne Montrose. 3 weeks later, on a clear April morning, Leah stood in the sanctuary, holding her daughter. The space had been cleaned, the pews repaired, the altar polished. Horace had rehung the bell in the steeple, and it rang softly in the wind. People from town had gathered not for a service exactly, but for something else, a celebration, a witness to survival and continuity. Doy had brought food. Dr. Alvarez had brought gifts for the baby. Leah had brought a framed copy of Karen's property deed, a dated 1945. Gwen had driven up from Asheville with final paperwork. Everything legal, everything settled. "I want to thank you all," Leah said, her voice carrying in the space. "When I found this place, I was running out of everything. Money, hope, reasons to keep going. You gave me all of that back. You helped me fight for this building, but more than that, you helped me fight for something to believe in." She looked down at the baby in her arms. "My grandmother lost her daughter to a system that valued rules over people. My mother grew up not knowing she was loved. I almost repeated that pattern. Almost gave up. Almost ran until there was nowhere left to run. But because of this place, because of the letters my grandmother left behind, because of all of you, my daughter gets something different. She gets a home. She gets a history. She gets to know exactly where she comes from and exactly how much she's loved." Leah walked to the altar and placed her hand on the wooden box that still sat there. The box that had held Karen's letters. Inside now were new items. The photograph of Karen from 1942, the locket with James's picture and the lock of baby hair. And beside them a new photograph. Leah holding baby Karen in front of the church. The same angle as her grandmother's picture all those years ago. 2 generations, 2 women named Karen, connected by blood and loss and survival, and finally by love. The baby stirred in her arms, making small sounds. Leah smiled and looked around the sanctuary, at the people who'd become her family, at the building that had become her home, at the future. She was building from the pieces of the past. She thought about her grandmother, young and alone, making impossible choices. She thought about her mother growing up searching for something she couldn't name. And she thought about herself standing here now with her daughter, 3 months old, born in the same room where her great-grandmother had been born 82 years before. The cycle was broken. The pattern was changed. What came next would be different. Not perfect, not easy, but built on a foundation of knowing where they came from and choosing where they'd go. Leah stepped out into the spring sunlight, her daughter in her arms, and felt the mountains rising around them like a promise. They were home. They were loved. They were exactly where they belonged.